So sitting beside me here is just a nice garbage can with a locking lid. You know, this would be your worst day ever if you decided just to open up the lid there and throw your garbage away, because inside this bucket is a monocled Cobra. And we're just cleaning up his cage and stuff like that, but we're going to talk about him a little bit more.
You are terrifying. I know. Don't be silly. There you go. Down first, please. There you go. Just put the lid on.
The reality is V wanted out while you had the open there. He can just climb out.
Not usually. So, the mealworm base in here, if I can. There it is. And
yep.
There's your mealworm.
And he seems quite content to live in an enclosure enclosed with a Cobra.
Yep, quite happy.
Who wouldn't?
And so there's another couple of them in there. They just do their thing. They help clean up. And like you can see, you know.
And sometimes, you know, you go into a snake enclosure, like a larger snake, and this is what, a 5-foot snake or so, you know.
Yeah.
The kid enclosure, you open the doors, they smell. This smells like earth.
Yeah, it just smells like dirt. It doesn't smell, even though there's a lot of currently there's a lot of residue going on. And so, yeah, these guys just help turn all this over. And so you'll notice I'm using the spatula-y, whatever, the shim thing that's called. So typically, venomous snakes shed fangs. And so it's prudent not to stick your fingers in anything that has poop in it. And so in this case, because when the mealworms and the isopods break it down, they spread it throughout. And so you never know where a fang could be. And unlike vipers, which have good-sized teeth, this guy has smaller teeth, which could easily sort of become a piece of poop in here.
Somewhat lodged in your finger while you're doing it, and then you'd also get all the dirt and everything with it too.
Yeah, so then you get envenomated by a tooth that's been shit out, and you have to explain that to your friends.
Yep.
And if you're gonna get envenomated and or have to have anti-venom, it's not because
I got envenomated. Well, no, it's not the right term, because, and I told you about this before with the stingrays.
Right.
When I was keeping the stingrays, I used to go in the tank and clean the tank, and all of a sudden I got stuck with a shed stingray barb. But stingrays don't actually, freshwater ones don't actually have a venom gland. It's just like a part of a protein in their slime coat.
Yeah.
But I had to go through that whole timeline, and I kept in my brain, I'm like, you're going to have to go to the hospital because you basically got stuck by a toenail. You know, it's the same thing. It just may as well have been a stick.
So I've pretty much decided that if at any point I make the stupid decision to clean out an enclosure with my hand and get envenomated by a shit out fang, I'm just going to tell people I screwed up and I got bit. Like, I screwed up, I made a mistake, whatever, I got bit. I'm not going to tell people I managed to stick myself while the snake was safely, I'm just going to take it. But, so I'm going to pull half of this out, and then we'll reseed it, and then we're good to go.
Now, you mix it up, you different types of isopods. You don't keep any of the ones that, like, when I went to another person's collection, and they really into isopods, and they got some of these isopods that are like downright sexy, like all these brilliant colors. Mm-hmm. That's irrelevant. They all do the same purpose.
Yeah, and they all fill different niche roles, right? So you get some of the Porcelios, or like what do they call it? Like the dairy cows. So it's a big black and white looking thing.
That's the ones I think they call an armadillo or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so these things it's a bigger creature. So much more obvious and much less welcome in a snake enclosure. I mean, while we feed them rodents, there's a lot of species that eat insects as it is. Copperheads, for example, feed on cicadas.
That's good. You ever been in the areas where the cicadas are?
Yeah.
And you kill all of them.
So, I mean, and in this particular case, I want a smaller isopod that is comfortable in a relatively high humidity. And that stays relatively high humidity, at least on the bottom layer. So in this case, I use dwarf white lines primarily, and then I have some springtails in there as well. They're a lot smaller.
I saw them. They're microscopic little things, and they keep them on charcoal.
Right. Yeah. tiny, tiny little things. So there's some of those in that seed
But
cover.
they need more moisture than the isopods, then, do they not?
They do, yeah. And so with most of this kind of setup, you need to have like a good inch and a half of substrate to provide a dry layer on the top, so the snake doesn't get scale rot or substrate, scale issues from the sitting on damp all the time. And then you also have to have the layer underneath where the activity happens, where the bugs live and do all the turnover.
Yeah, stratified.
Yeah, so essentially they come up, eat shit, go down,
Yeah.
and then everything gets turned over.
Yeah, there's nature's composters. It's just we're converting them into a much smaller environment and letting them clean our cages for us. Or at least keep the cages cleaner longer.
Yeah, and it's I think that's part of it for me, is that a lot of people that I've seen, this is a relatively new phase or fad or whatever.
Yeah, I'd never heard of it. You were the first one that told me about it, and it stuck in my brain. And then I was at an orchid meeting, and a guy did a presentation on bioactive orchid potting mix. And I'm like, what's he done? He put bugs and springtails into his pots for the exact same purpose. And I was like, okay, I've missed out 20 years worth of reptile keeping.
Well, and so when I started as a kid in the 80s, and it was just kind of, you take a piece of what is outside and you bring it inside. And so I used to, as a kid, I started with newts. I literally went down to a stream down my back lane, grabbed a bucket full of newts with whatever else was in there, put it in a fish tank, and it just kind of proceeded. And then I read a book by Philip de Vojoli, great book, Art of Snake Keeping.
He wrote a lot of reptile books.
Yeah, and so he wrote one that was almost completely about this kind of stuff. Late 80s, early 90s, fantastic book. And then, and so it kind of comes and goes in stages, but in the more recent sort of surge of this, it's become a little bit more, I don't want to say for lazy people, but people don't necessarily start at the beginning and finish at the end. They kind of stop a little bit sooner. And so this process, because it's a very restricted area, it's very small in terms of comparison to the wild, there's nowhere for all of the isopod poop to go.
Yeah.
So outside,
it builds up.
Yeah, outside it just dissipates into the rest of the world, whereas here it's got nowhere to dissipate to.
So we had isopods to help break down all the stuff from the higher animals. We don't have anything that breaks down their product. So the only way that would work in a closed system, if it was a fairly large system, it would still have to be fair size, would be it had a bunch of live plant life, and then they in turn would break down those products.
And the same process comes into that, the aquaponics, right, where you have fish pooping in the water, which creates nutrients in the water, which then goes back to the plants, to the soil, and back, and in that circle. And so with this, we're missing a step where it comes back again without the plant life.
Yeah.
And so
plant life would just add headaches to the size of this tank. It would just add you a whole pile of headaches.
And realistically, it's certainly not impossible to do. A lot of the frog keepers, for example, that keep bromeliads and all that kind of jazz, they have complete circles in there, and it works really well. I just happen to kill plants like you wouldn't believe, so I don't even try. I guess I'm going to be marinating some snake poo later today.
So we've just reset the Monocled Cobra's tank. Dan's stripped out about 70% of the media. He's replaced it with some brand new sphagnum moss. He's inoculated the tank with a culture of dwarf white isopods. He's also got some other things that are in there already, some mealworms and some springtails and stuff. He's just agitated the surface of the entire thing, and he's moistened it down. Now he's just going to be replacing some of the different structures and the hides and the water dishes and whatnot. And then the cage is ready to go for the animal again.
Gonna make it look pretty.
And how often would you realistically have to do that? With all the isopods and everything, they're kind of your cleanup.
Yeah, I do this once a year. This is, very rare I do this. I do, if he has any...
Well, there's he give him his Barbie castle, because, cobras like Barbie castles.
Yes, they do. If he has any, sometimes, because I heat the room, it doesn't necessarily respond to significant heat fluctuations. So in summer, if we have a 32 degree day or whatever, the room heats up really quick. The heat doesn't necessarily dissipate really quick from inside.
Okay.
And it's the same in winter. It provides a buffer, but sometimes if it drops really quick, it takes a second to come back up.
Yeah.
And so if he's...
But in nature, it would, we'd have those diurnal changes in nature a little bit. Even the countries that he's from.
I could change it. I could definitely change it. I just don't want to. I think they thrive on having the variety. But it causes problems in a drop if he's just eaten and then suddenly it drops.
Yes.
And so he'll regurge.
Yeah, that's the problem with snakes. A lot of people don't know is that if the temperature drops below their threshold for their metabolism, snakes are usually only one way. And if it can't go that way because they can't function because they're cold-blooded, it has to go the other way, and then they throw up. And that's a wonderful treat for a keeper.
It's a smell you can, as a snake keeper, you know that smell.
Yep.
You don't forget that smell.
Yeah. For years, I've associated the smell of buying these Sterilite tubs with snakes.
Yeah.
And I go to Walmart and I go to pick up a couple of these tubs, and like right away I'm caught with that smell. Like, it smells like snake already. I haven't had snakes in years, but it's not snakes. It's just the smell of the tub.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I mean, but yeah. So sorry. So if there are any like super large bits in there, like if he regurges, or for the next couple of weeks when he poops, I'll probably pull out at least half of it, just until it gets up to full speed.
Till the culture is all fully, And
then after
those
that,
isopods ain't taking down a regurgitated mammal.
right. And so until unless that happens or until they've sort of built up, I'll do a bit of spot cleaning. Every now and again I do spot cleaning, but I don't necessarily like to do general spot cleaning like once a week unless it's something significant. And the reason for that is the more you open yourself to being bit, the more chance you've got of being bit. Yep. So I just don't play.
Let's avoid that.
Play stupid games, you win stupid prizes.
Yeah.
So that is Neil. Neil is...
That's his name?
Yeah. Yeah.
What can you tell us about Neil?
So Neil is a monocled cobra. He's called a monocled because on the back of his hood he has a pattern. You won't be able to see it right now, obviously, because he's facing us.
Yeah.
But if I just
It's a
do
circle.
that, you can see there's almost a pair of... the singles. So he has a single monocle, so it's not all the way around on his. It's almost like a horseshoe, and that's to do with his genetics. So he has some kind of, I think he's got albino in his blood or something.
Is he captive bred?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you breed him with another one like him, you get albinos, or there's something like that going on. That's why you have the horseshoe pattern on the back of his head there. So a regular, like a normal, we just have just a single monocle, a single circle.
Well, we talked about them. They're the most widespread of all the cobras whatsoever.
In captivity, for sure.
Well, even in the wild, its distribution in the wild is pretty much all of Asia.
Yeah, it's a massive sort of distribution for sure. I'm not sure genetics-wise how much has been done into the variety. I mean, you can see he's loud, he's obnoxious, he looks the game, but he's not actually very aggressive. He's very visually driven.
Well, cobras are known for bite first, ask questions later, right? That's just the way they are.
And so he's very visually driven, so if I wave my foot, he follows my foot, but he's not necessarily coming at me. And he might launch towards me, but he won't really make it much past this door line here. Typically they strike in a downward arc, and because of his S shape there, he might have a bit more of a launch pad, but it's not like a viper, which typically strikes from that S position that everyone knows, right?
Yeah, he doesn't look he's going to be able to go a lot of distance with his strike.
No,
But they are known to be exceptionally fast species.
they are. So and that also actually comes again to the biting. So I was reading something the other day, the discussion on whether it actually qualifies as a spitting cobra. So the question comes down to what spitting is and the mechanisms behind spitting cobras. He doesn't have holes at the front of his fangs that enable him to project venom out in a mechanical sense, but in a literal sense, he strikes with such power and such force that actually venom will come out. Like if I spit, it just comes out.
It's just not coming out by the same mechanism that it would be delivered.
Yeah, it's not an intentional.
Are there spitting cobras in his range? I know there's African spitting cobras.
Yeah, there is an Asian. Yeah, yeah.
I know based on his species name, which is.
It's Naya. So that's his genus name. His genera is Naya, so it's spelled N-A-J-A as opposed to the way it sounds. But so he's cozy as a species.
And it was often confused that because this species had such wide distribution that it was often confused that it could be a spitting cobra.
Yeah, I mean, like realistically, you find these on Chinese islands. You find them across Asia generally. Like it's super interesting how far they go. I just don't know in terms of species-wise if it's been broken down.
Would this be one of the species that the famed Indian dancers or charmers would use? Because I know this species does come from India as well.
Yeah, so they could do, but typically they use a spectacled cobra. So a spectacle cobra is roughly the same looking, but instead of having the one circle, it literally has two circles. And
Yeah.
it's joined at the bottom, so it looks like a pair of spectacles.
Okay.
Slightly different venom. So the spectacled, if that bites you, it really will kill you quick.
So you got that going for you.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to be dead twice. Yeah, so the spectacle is essentially the Indian cobra, and there's been plenty of deaths recently. I think in the last 6 months there are at least one, maybe two that I can think of, where people have gone to remove snakes from someone's home or something along those lines and then been bitten and died before they got to medical care. So it's not unusual at all. You can see there that he's following you.
They're such angry.
Yeah, he's certainly good at the show. In this particular case, he's just in his sloughing process. He's shedding his skin. So you can see some of the skin on his side there is a little bit, it's starting to come off, it's starting to bubble up a little bit.
Well, it's hard to deny how sexy they are. Like when you look at snakes, you think about all this stuff. Now, I know you in your little room there, you keep all these different deadly brown worms, but this is, this is very striking.
So, I will politely disagree. However, I do love this guy's personality. He is an aggressive, bluffy, loudmouth yob, and I love it. I think he's wonderful. I don't find it visually appealing. I'm not a fan of him, like the hood stuff, and it's really not my cup of tea. But at least he doesn't rattle. He's not like the Diamondbacks that rattle and irritate me. So
irritate you. They just need love.
Yes, yes they do.
How do you tell boys from girls? This is not an animal I think I'd want to be sitting there and probing. You can tube them, but...
Yeah, that's really it. I mean, you can look at tail differences, and that has different success rates depending on species. Specifically, like thinking of some of the vipers, you can tell really quickly just by looking which is... Yeah, Neil for sure could be a girl. I very much doubt it. I once referred to his ass looking big, and there was no repercussions to that whatsoever. So I'm fairly certain he's good. I guess one day I may sex him, and that would be like you mentioned earlier, the tubes. So I would throw him in a tube, have someone hold him in a tube, and then stick a probe up his jacksie.
Yeah.
But he already doesn't like me, so I'm in no rush.
I don't think any of the cobras like anybody. They're just all like this.
Well, and I mean, these guys are also notoriously bad at riding hooks, especially when it comes to food time. Some of the other cobras ride hooks really well. So an ullifero, which is the big banded cobra, they get big and they sit on hooks perfectly. So.
Yeah, he just looks so friendly. But they're always like this.
He's actually, so he's good at this, but if you start handling him and playing around with him, he calms down pretty quick and just wants to leave.
I'm good. He just wants to snuggle. Right, Neil? You're just misunderstood?
I call him, so I got him because a friend of mine, Neil.
We don't like Neil anymore.
Well, no, so Neil was convinced that I should have a cobra, and I'm not like super big on cobras, like whatever. He was brown, and he was really irritating. Indian kid, Neil, thought that I was being sarcastic when I said, he also, like you, Neil, is small, brown, and irritating. And so now it just kind of stuck. He's the only one with a name.
Neil's all about love.
Neil was born in the 60s.
You just herd them back. You don't have to hook them. They just go back on their own.
He knows where he's going. I don't think he actually does. I shouldn't say stuff like that. Oh, there you go, big guy.
And he's going to go directly into his hide, probably, right?
He may. So he's very territorial by nature. So he may not go straight to his hide, especially because it's new.
Oh yeah, you just reset his entire cage.
Yeah.
So there you have it, guys. Monocled Cobra by my good friend Dan here. This guy knows what he's doing. Be smart, be safe. Thanks, Dan.
You're welcome, man.